divided, that the lies now won. They say they're the truth.
Tobias, good to see you again, brother. Long time no see. It's been a little too long, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah. How are
been a
things
bit.
going, man?
There's a lot going on. Trying to scale the company. Right now we switched up our branding a bit, and started hiring a lot. So right now this Monday I'll have like 4 people at our offices now. Which is, compared to since last we spoke, I only had kind of a co-founder and some developers in
The
India.
last
Now we're
time we
trying to
spoke, you had a
make
home
it more of a
office. You
real
didn't
company.
have an office. When did that happen?
Well, yeah, that's also something that happened. So in the center of Copenhagen, in by the kind of city center, we just found a really good place, and we decided just to go for it. The idea is, how can we go from just being like a freelancing business where it may be me who's doing like most of the work, where I just delegate it to like my team, to having me be more and more removed from the company and bring in like other players to reduce like key man risk. So that like most of the business previously was just me doing the sales and then me doing the delivery, where now our biggest project ever has been signed by someone who isn't me, and then basically fully delivered by my team without me having to go too much into it. And that has
That's
been
awesome.
it's a real experience. Yeah.
Absolutely. So for the audience that doesn't know you, and actually for Rowan and Ryan, who are probably like, who is this twink and why is he speaking on AI? Give us a little bit of background. Tell us about your company and what you specialize in.
Yeah, certainly. So I work with the top 1 to 5% of AI users. So usually that is people who already kind of run or in positions of, let's say, power within companies, who understand how AI is used, and they might be using it themselves, but they don't know how to actually implement it or get it working within their own company. Because there's a big difference between getting your team to use new technology, actually fully implement it and have the systems in place, and you just sit around playing with ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, all these other tools. So that's fundamentally what we do. We work with companies like BlackBerry, DSV, Workday, to name a few. We worked with about 75 companies over the last 2 years, where we transitioned into AI, about, let's say, a year ago.
Right.
With us doing like automations and general development work before that.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, so obviously we're in April of 2026. AI is booming. Everybody's asking, well, what's your plan for AI? Every investor is asking it. What percentage of companies do you think are using AI purely for profit and loss impact versus, like still running toy pilots for the board?
I think most of it is genuinely toy pilots. I think it's just R&D basically for these companies. I know a lot of them have seen ROI, but it's like, it's a classic thing where like most AI projects just fail. Like when a team internally spins something up and they don't know what they're doing, it just fails. And to be fair, most projects that any team takes on fails. So there's a quite high, people fuck around and they find out and they learn something, and then 5 projects later they figure out something that actually works, right? Like
Right.
and even for us, like we build these kind of all the time, and
Right.
there's certainly some of the things we did on the first projects that we now like just have fixed in our actual development process. So making sure that we build it properly from the start can only be accomplished after that initial basic trial phase, right?
Right. And so a lot of these models too are just API calls, right? Data's leaky. So what in your opinion is actually defensible with AI in business right now?
Right. I would say that, a lot of it is, if we're talking like purely from a defense standpoint, is running it locally is probably the biggest piece. We are getting models like Gemma 4 coming out now where the tokens per second is incredibly high, even on weaker like devices. Like I can just from my phone run a model locally and securely that outputs like blocks of text in just seconds purely with the own like device's hardware. And I've been testing like the local models basically every single month over the last like at least year, if not 2 years. And even on my PC, and I have a pretty strong PC, sometimes it's running at like 2 to 5 tokens per second. So that means it's outputting these like words very slowly, and you can't really run the systems from there. So if you want to have a defensible system, you need to call an external server. And when you call an external server, certainly all the data is passing uh, through, and that data, even though it's encrypted, can be picked up. So you have these Chinese servers who's just listening to all communication, right? All American, all European communication, and then when we reach like quantum computing, they'll just unencrypt basically the last 50 years of data.
SHA won't mean shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
Um,
and on that note, so long-term solution. I mean, what do you see as the long-term solution for that? Because obviously we're in an age where privacy is just an illusion, right? So long-term for people that are concerned about, the data leak, especially when you start dealing with, higher end companies, medical companies specifically, because of sensitive data. What do you think the long-term solution is for that? I mean, because not everybody's going to be able to bring their own stuff in-house.
Well, yeah, certainly. Um, a lot of it is moving towards open source. Like I'm personally actually a big advocate for like the big model providers, generally speaking. But I know that like we're getting to a point where a lot of the open source models can be more at least secure to run if that is the goal. When I work with my clients, the security bottleneck of having all our chats logged on a Anthropic server, like a Claude server, isn't that big compared to the risk of setting up the entire system for ourselves, right? The scope of setting up a secure system on that side is more like there's high risk there. So to answer your core question is like I would say we can't really do anything about the data transfer. Like basically, no matter what, the data that we're sending right now, we can't really like reasonably encrypt it better than we currently are, and it is being picked up. So almost no matter what, the data we're sending right now in 20 years will be um, unencrypted. Then with the advent of this quantum computing to like de-encrypt our information, we can then also quantum encrypt our information. So as like it's a cat and mouse race, as the attacks towards our data gets stronger and more efficient, then we also have countermeasures to that. And if you quantum encrypt data, it is basically physically impossible to uncompute it because the way that encryption works is mathematics, where you take
Scope of that formula is going to grow so complex with so many variations in such a short period of time that they can take that right path randomly, even with quantum calculations, is astronomical. You're approaching NCR issues, right? NP, like you're never going to be able to close it.
Yeah, literally.
See, Rowan, this is
the
why
numbers are
I
just
brought you in.
Like yeah.
Everything he's saying is right. I would say, from a non man in the middle, we'll call it, and I know there's going to be the white hats and the black hats out there that are going to tell me I'm an asshat for using that, but for general layman's terms, we're going to say man in the middle situations. If you're a developer and your company or healthcare or anything and your company is leaning on AI for anything, Stop copying, pasting your shit into AI. Give it hypotheticals. Learn from it. Use it as a teaching tool. Quit giving it the exact shit that is your company's IP.
Yeah, because that model's being
Yeah.
trained on it.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
yeah, I mean, let's look at the beginning days of what was it? It was OpenAI. They originally were like, "Hey, we need more data," and they were like, "Cool, here's all of GitHub," which is already like a daft move when you think of some of the stuff that's on GitHub that probably shouldn't be on GitHub, but won't go down that
Yeah.
rabbit hole. And then their next move was, "Hey, we need more." I'll give you one wild guess as to what they gave it, and a hint. They had to shut it down immediately after and start introducing guardrails on how it spoke to people.
Reddit.
Like Reddit.
It was
or something.
Reddit.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's
Yeah.
another reason why Zuckerberg and Elon were brilliant in the way they did it with Meta. I mean, look at Meta's being trained, their AI is being trained on everything on their platforms. X, on an even bigger scale, was acquired by XAI, which was then acquired by SpaceX. So, but just the acquisition of XAI purchasing X, they now have access to all of that real-time data. It is
Which is another reason why
insane.
you see policing of certain topics hand depending much more, because, and I apologize if this digresses, I don't intend for it to, but when you see certain things being announced of, hey, we stopped using cameras in this area, or we're no longer allowing the statistics of this data that's sampling large groups of people to be public because it's starting to notice a pattern that might be perceived as racist. Well, that happens when AI learns off of it too.
Mhm.
It doesn't care about opinions. It cares about statistics and commonalities and frequency of occurring events and stuff like that. And the way that you teach it and ask it questions, it's all very particular. I mean, if you ask it to write an essay on the history of World War II versus you ask it to write write an essay on the history of World War II, per the viewpoints and perspectives of a specific author that has already written on it, you're going to get two wildly different essays.
Right.
So in my question, this is obviously kind of a sidebar away from that, but you mentioned, the policing of certain topics, things like that. Obviously, X prides itself as a free speech company. How does that, I know, right? A free speech company, but with those kinds of guardrails, how does that affect our First Amendment right to freedom of speech? Tobias, I know you're from Denmark. You guys.
Well, no,
there.
honestly, that's a really good thing to bring in anyhow. An outside viewpoint on what America brags about nonstop. And I mean, we're a political channel, and I know this is going to derail off your outline, and I'm so sorry, but let's go down this rabbit hole. From somebody who's not American and on a usually politically strong channel, let's go down the rabbit hole on America beating its fucking chest about how we're so star-spangled fucking awesome with our freedoms. And an external person now being able to witness as we are handing them out to anybody who wants them except for Americans anymore. Let's go down that rabbit hole, right? Because that's what we're witnessing. That's exactly what you're asking. So ask your question again, Tobias. Dive in on it, man.
Yeah. With those kinds of safeguards and stuff being put into place by an AI company like Meta or X, how does that level of policing end up affecting our rights to freedom of speech? And inversely, how does restricting or policing that right to free speech affect the training models or affect the training on models going forward?
Yeah. I mean, great question, right? I think fundamentally there are 2 points to it, right? One, there's the terms of service of that individual company. So they obviously have some individual right as a corporation to actually enforce their own policy on a platform that they run and manage, just baseline. So there's something on that. I think it's a joke to say that America is free. Like really, like just generally speaking, it at least not if you look at it objectively. Like it's
from a realist standpoint.
Sorry, yeah.
From a realist standpoint, let's put feelings, emotions out of it. Like that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Speak facts. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely some freedoms that America has that other countries, like I'm from Denmark, right? Like, and I've traveled basically all of Europe, and I've gone to America like 5, 6, 7, 8 times. I don't know, like a couple times, and being able to shoot a gun when I'm like 12 is like absurd for me going there, but it's like that's a freedom, right? That's something that's wild. But then on the other side of that, you guys have rules like you can't drink till 21. So like yes, you are very, very free on certain points. So for example, I want to tie this back into the privacy thing, but it's so like it's such a dichotomy because saying that America is free is technically true, but saying that America like isn't free on a lot of points is also true. So it's depends on what you prioritize as a country, right? Depends on what is a freedom defined as, and like here with the First Amendment, right? The verbiage there in the document is peaceably, like in peace. So you're able to, you know, do protests as long as it's in peace. You're able to say your opinions in peace. So as long as there's no, let's say, if you're speaking from, let's say, the AI perspective, if you're speaking to an AI and talking about how you're going to commit genocide or something horrible, then the AI constricting you in that conversation, I wouldn't say like goes against our like the First Amendment. If we're talking about policies on a platform, like let's say monitoring all social media posts with an AI, which all major platforms do, you could argue that there is some discrepancy in the fact that they might go to like they might attack one's personal freedom, but I don't think it's on the platform individually. I think it might be shady. I think it might be, like if I'm going on to TikTok, then I expect that the algorithm is tailored to what they want me to see, right? And
Yeah,
that's
right.
a social contract I go into when I use that platform. And that's also the foundation of how all great social content models work, right? Like if I'm watching
Right.
something, great, but
So
yeah, I think it's a touchy point. It's yeah, it's hard to put it on any one of the because they're
so
all like right in their own. It just depends on what you value.
well, and so obviously here as Americans we value free speech, being able to say what we want within the bounds of the law. For the old school, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. But as long as it's within the bounds of the law. Now, the question as a follow-up that I have is these a lot of companies like XAI, OpenAI, these companies are going to wind up in contracts with the federal government, right? And information that would normally be stored on a proprietary server and at least somewhat protected. You look at companies like Telegram or Signal that are private. When these AI models are being trained on the user data, and then that same AI model is implemented into some level of government, what risks do we run
Mm.
of the government, whether purposefully or inadvertently, breaking the own privacy laws and violating our rights?
They probably have. Yeah.
How can and
Yeah.
so what kind of safeguards in AI are could we look at that prevents that sort of thing?
Can I chime in with an example for you, Tobias?
Sure.
Right.
No, I won't go into the exact details because I don't want to be misquoting anything. But I know one of the AI systems that they had looked at when they were looking at doing the age verification for Discord. Some of the hackers who were playing around with that system had discovered real quickly that that AI system had been found to have contracts with government databases, which means who we were and our digital footprint were about to be hard tied to us had gotten leaked.
Right.
That's a great example to build off of.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, I can see that. I'm personally not worried that much about data privacy. Like, you know, anyone who's ever like done any sort of like OPSEC or like, just try to hack a small bit will know that most information is accessible if you try, or if you maybe, do a bit of gray hack. Like it's I see the core issue that is lined out, right? And I know that if the government starts using these AI like models, they are going to break their own rules. Like they're going to
Mhm.
like the way that they've been trained is just objectively illegal in most places in the world. Just like and the question is, are we willing to pay that cost? Like, are we willing to pay the price of we want like we want to be the best? Is my assumption. So would we rather win and then do it a bit on the gray side, or would you hold it off for another, let's say, 50 years and do it fully properly? Like it's going to if you want enough data to do it this way, like to the scale and to the power of the genetic systems that are being built, you're going to push the timeline to the development of the AI models. And
Mhm.
I'm not sure if AGI is the right word, but definitely there's a like just the power of the AI agents themselves, right, are improving absurdly rapidly, right? I mean,
Exponential. Every generation is exponential in the last because you have AI training AI now. That aspect of the quantum logic is closing in, even if we don't have the hardware to keep up with it yet, which is
Well, and
part of the problem with the warehouses now, right?
Well, look, I mean, look at where we're at right now. We are still technically in ANI, right? Artificial narrow intelligence, and we are very rapidly progressing towards AGI. What comes after AGI is what? I think it's ASI. Is that it? I could be wrong. This is all totally out of my
if you're
wheelhouse.
talking about the different dimensions and progressions of the intellectual states of AI, I don't have any of that nonsense memorized. I mean, the theory behind them, it makes sense. I mean, I was laughing because he mentioned the gray hackers and anybody who looks into it. As much as I try to give the example of Discord, but I mean, he's right. There's a $5 freebie. I mean, it used to be paid for, but it became free very, very quick. Wireshark. Anybody who's ever touched Wireshark as even just an intro to any kind of, anything knows that like you can go to McDonald's, launch the program. Don't do this. Don't do this. You will go to jail. But you can go to McDonald's, connect to their Wi-Fi, launch the program, and all of a sudden, every idiot in there that's on the Wi-Fi doing work from home on their business laptop is leaking IP, like it's their job. Yeah, you're gonna have some encrypted, but you're gonna have some that are they don't have their VPN on, and for some reason the backend website doesn't have HTTPS, and all of their stuff's coming through plain text because they're idiots. So like it's so easy, it's ridiculous anymore.
Right.
As far as the concept of what we're willing to give up, I laughed because you said that and I immediately thought Minority Report. What liberties are we willing to give up to ensure that and this is going to segue really well into what I know you want to get into, Robert. I know you're itching at the bit, so this is going to really dive into what he wants. Another big question that's coming with this generative, and I don't want to jump the gun, so I mean you can stay on your generations talk for a moment, but this is going to inevitably end up in our wars. So to get our technology there faster, what liberties do we surrender to our government so that they have laws around their development of it? And we can be, as you said, Tobias, the best. Every country's going to want to do that. Which country is going to get their citizens to comply with that faster so they can get this technology evolve faster and more accurately and into those technologies?
I think the general approach is it is like you're not virtuous if you're weak. Like if you don't have the capability to, let's say, develop the best AI model or like actually have the strongest military systems, then you're not virtuous by not using them. So America is known for like military dominance, generally speaking, because they invest so much into the military sphere. They're byproducts of that with like shit healthcare and stuff like that. But fundamentally, they are respected because they have the capability to, right? And then, broadly speaking, choose not to, compared to what they could be able to do. Like they could, let's say, challenge Europe
Right.
on like a military 1-to-1. They'd probably lose, like just plain numbers, but that is only if you have like the aggregation of everyone working together. My point being, for this is like the general American principle has just been, we are willing to do what must be done to get to a point where we have the ability to choose between what we do. So it's not the Chinas of the world that get to pick if we're going to be run over with these agentic AI and that sets up all these drone bots, whatever. Like, we want to be there first, and then we want to be able to control the other people into doing the right thing from that
To restore
viewpoint.
what you
That's
said previously, America chooses to be the find out portion of fuck around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and what you just said there, Tobias, I think is the perfect segue, because you mentioned the capabilities, and that brings us to the core question of the podcast, and that is, using this technology, should we be building weapons?
We are. Yeah.
And from a Western perspective, should the top talent in the West be working on those weapon systems? Not support, not adjacent, but direct lethal autonomy.
Generally speaking, no. I see the point of doing it. I
There's always an
like we
ethical dilemma with any logic that can be implied in math or code. And I don't think we ever hit a guardrail strong enough to account for some random logic train that the AI can come up with going, well, this is technically not what we were told not to do, and then doing a really dumb thing. And then that country is responsible for that, period. It doesn't matter if it's autonomous.
100%.
Right.
When I go to work every single day now, I walk past buildings that are like, we're talking 10 times the age of America. Okay, so like America as a nation, yeah, sure, might be like, up and coming. They have a fine thing going on, right? There's a lot of power there, and there's a lot of great intellect. And I work with like primarily Americans, right? But there's also the fact that because we had like this like fuck around and find out. When you fuck around a lot, you're going to fuck a lot of people over. And if you suddenly start focusing all your energy on building great weapons and then doing absurd shits across like the entire country, across the entire world, you'll end up in a situation where there's a lot of pressure for you to stop doing that, because that goes against the core principles of basically every other country, right? Like in Denmark, in UK, and countries like this, there's honestly, it's getting to a point where Russia is looked at more favorably than the US is in some parts, right? Especially on the blue side, Danish, so which is like the Republican side in Danish terms, would like there's consequences, right? And it's just what.
And so, and on that note, Rowan, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to put an analogy out there for anybody who watches this part of the segment. Most people think it's a direct correlation between fucking around and finding out, and I'm going to break this down in a really funny way in my mind. It's actually much more like exponential. So it's like making a small investment and then getting a massive colossal return. The more you invest in fucking around, the larger the check of the find out's going to be. And as much as I love my country, I'll be the first to admit we should be embarrassed of what we stood for in the past versus where we currently are with our standing in the world, as well as many other factors, which I won't go into. Totally different discussion, totally different period. Our find out check, especially with certain conversations like possibly leaving who, etc., is burning bridges that are currently probably protecting us. Because while yes, we are hemorrhaging to keep these relationships alive, and there needs to be some sort of discussion had on those fronts, pulling out completely severs that relationship in a way where when somebody decides to hand us that find out check, who's really coming to our aid? I mean, the biggest thing I can say on that front at this point is Japan's really happy with our cartoons and our dancing, right? Like that's the only thing we got going for us right now.
Well, right. And so to your point, Tobias, when you said, the capabilities there, but it's really about the principle, right, of each individual nation and what they want to do. Obviously, and this is one of my big worries, do you worry about moral asymmetry in this scenario? So like if you were to refuse to build for the DoD here in the US, but Chinese and Russian engineers don't refuse to the PLA, what's the net moral outcome of that? Are you and are you, as the one who refused to do it, morally complicit in any way?
So I obviously don't believe in moral relativism. So the underlying general narrative that is, let's say, pushed by the media is one that, like, we believe that we are right, therefore we should put it on to others, right? Where, I would say yes, like to some degree, you could say that you're morally responsible for that, but the question is, if a country like China, right, start building AI agent like models and whatever, are they worse than you? Like actually, like if you evaluate it like quite bluntly, is the moral are they morally worse than an American building that? Like if you look at something like Palantir, like I would say that yes, like China has a lot of bad things related to it, but we're getting to a point where now, as a fairly unbiased external person, I've been to China, I've been to the US, I've been to like
Speak freely, Tobias.
I just don't see how
Speak freely.
you can claim moral superiority. I honestly have questions on the moral superiority of America anymore. If you look at Murray, he did a comprehensive study of all human accomplishment from 850 BC. Well, he looked from 2000 BC, but the thing I'm quoting here is from 850 BC to 1950 our time, and 97% of all human accomplishment has come from like 4 European countries. So like Denmark, France, London, and like Germany and a bit of the surrounding area. 97% of all human accomplishment from that era happened in those countries. And what we've seen with America is that most of the people in America are people who settled from the core piece of Europe that it has basically built the entire foundation of all moral structures, right? Judeo-Christian Christian like religion that at least is quite prominent in America. That entire foundation is built on something that is still around, that you can still go visit, right? Like, I went to Vienna, which isn't in the list of countries I just mentioned, but you can't walk like 100 meters without seeing a church. Like if you're in the city center, you can't, right? I recently went to America, and all the churches there are like, they're nice, but they're very
Dilapidated.
I don't know the definition of that word, to be honest, but
They're all
very
run down because we've drifted away from it, and that ideology is dying.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I
and
think
there's
at least
on the
drifted
flip
away.
side, you have mega churches too.
drifted
So
away.
you either have rundown, beat up churches, or you have the mega churches that are
The
just
mega churches news
ridiculous.
media. It's
Yeah.
it's a false concept. It's
Yeah.
it's a violation of its own teachings. It's a false ideology. Not ideology. I guess
So-
ideology. False idol.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. So I guess to follow up on my previous question, the line of I just build tools, not policy, right? Do you think that's still an ethical position now, or do you think it's more cowardice when the tools decide who lives?
I'd
This is
like
talking.
I'd like for both of us to answer this one. I'm gonna let Tobias go first, but I want to chime in on
Sure.
this one then.
Absolutely.
I want to quote King. I want to quote King Baldwin. So King Baldwin, he has a very famous quote that says, when you go to meet God, he will not give you excuses for, and I'm paraphrasing him, for all the actions you took when other men were commanding you. So when a king told you to do X and you executed on it, it's still your own act. You still do it of your own fruition, of your own willingness. So the concept of saying I just built the tool, I just built the weapon, I just like you're still responsible for the byproduct of your actions. The necessary evil that is injected upon the world due to your condemnations might still, will still fall upon your shoulders when push comes to shove.
Yeah, absolutely. Rowan.
No, not that it would have mattered, but Tobias, I really like the stance you took on this, by the way, and I think this is a reality check for a lot of people. So before I go off my rant here, considering I still haven't divulged too much about myself on this show, so with my following statements, keep in mind, agnostic. I believe God, Jesus. I just think that what we have currently has been tampered with. So I don't just follow the Bible blindly. Very right leaning in a lot of my ideologies. At the same time, one of the things that no party seems to be good at doing anymore in America is really owning up to what they're responsible for. And we're seeing this in a lot of things. Our military took a pledge to protect us from threats, foreign and domestic. We can't even get the fucking Epstein list truly out or punish those in charge. We can't get anything done anymore. When it comes to the dilemma of, I was just told to build the tool. I won't sit here and quote some famous author to bias all the more to you. I respect the shit out of the fact that you clearly really educated yourself within our culture. But I'm the guy who grew up in the Hicks. I have no idea what any of that is. I didn't go to college. So I'm going to quote somebody a little bit simpler. We'll go with Oppenheimer, right? He probably quoted somebody else. I know it from Oppenheimer, the movie Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
And that is, for I am become death. All right. The second you create something that is responsible for any kind of death and decay across our world, or corruption, or tampering of morality, whatever you want to look at it, you are directly responsible. You gave the means for the evil to set root. Period. End of story.
Well, and let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about the Oppenheimer effect, because he built it, it worked, and then he immediately regretted it. So, to your point, if you help build something that is, eventually turns into an effective autonomous weapon, and it works as intended, do you think that builders like yourselves would regret that? And does that even matter at that point?
Your advice.
Would regret it. I think depends on the builder you're contemplating. I have met a bunch of psychopaths who would not give a damn, who would just be happy. So, it depends on, usually the people who do the most wrong are the people who believe they're the most right. Looking at America specifically, no offense, but it's
Not wrong.
Claim
Not wrong.
moral superiority when I don't know. I try not to stay involved in all of these wars and stuff like that, but it's even if you're just kind of just looking from the side, yes, sure. I can see the reasoning, and I can see the logic, and I can see the excuses, right? But you don't have to have a lot of it's also quite easy to see through, right? Oh, suddenly a war in they start the war in Iran. 2 weeks after like some Epstein file bullshit. Like, okay, there's probably some correlation there, but like even then, what's the underlying of all of that, right? Because for me, all the news is just like same thing happening with a new person in the actual headline. So like Iran and US are in a war. Okay, cool. And there's some reasoning why. Okay, Ukraine and Russia are in a war. Okay, and there's just constantly like new things going on, right? But there'll always be more things going on, and if you consistently try and contempt yourself, or like try and like waste all of your human life on that, you're going to end up like in this like narrative that you've made of yourself that you're like right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a
Yeah.
famous perspective. I'm pretty sure both Robert and Ryan have heard this. You may have as well. But the winners of wars are the ones who write history. You'll never find a textbook written by the loser. All right.
Right.
Nothing that's widely accepted anyhow. So you end up propagating that ideology of what you're saying throughout the next generations. The stuff that I've learned as I've gotten older about World War II and the realities of what led to things and certain stuff, and I won't go down the rabbit hole too far, Robert, I promise. But it is totally different than the ideologies I was taught. Like, no joke, I want to say U.S. schools and what we were taught about history between the 90s and the 2010s and probably beyond, I can't speak for it, is such a farce as to the reality of the situation. And it has to do with the fact that we rewrote parts of it. Certain groups, big old quotes here, certain groups helped rewrite it and took over the production, monopolized the production of textbooks across America. So their ideologies and how they wanted us to view what happened. Yeah. And that's not a generalized statement, so nobody freak out in the comments. But the more you look into what I'm saying, the more you will realize the disgusting truth of how accurate some of these statements are. You can't overly broaden and categorize the entire group, but there is very clearly individuals within the group that had a very high stake in the future of America and how we would view and react in the world. And as you've said, Tobias, what we were versus what we're seen as nowadays, and we think we're in the right all the fucking time, even though the world's looking at us like, what are you doing? It's disgusting.
Well, and so to pivot back to your point about war, and Rowan, I want to go to you on this first. Does the West having superior AI weapons prevent war, or does it enable it because leaders think they can win clean? Which way do you bet?
This becomes a point the finger policy, right? Anytime somebody comes out with something new, everybody's going to point the finger and use it as an excuse for them to follow suit. You end up with different policies like the nuclear arms policies that we have, like Iran's freaking out right now about the statutes that we put in place to prevent them from developing and whatnot. But it's the same thing. They're going to point the finger. You have it. And if you have it and you have the right to use it, we have the right to have it ourselves, to defend ourselves. And that's what it's going to boil down to. And it doesn't matter if it's America. It doesn't matter if it's Japan. It doesn't matter if it's China. It doesn't matter if it's some super small tribal village in Africa for some fucking reason. Like that, whoever does it first is irrelevant. Everybody's going to point the finger and say, me too.
Well,
and it's, as Tobias said, same headline, different thing.
In this
arms
kind
race,
of
space race.
That's exactly what I was going to correlate it to. In this kind of situation, it always comes down to a nuclear arms race. And then when we realize the destructive capability and that maybe the amount of people that should have access to that is less than could have access to it, then we signed nuclear non-proliferation treaties. And I mean, do you think we have a point in the future where we have an AI weapon non-proliferation treaty?
So, yes, I believe that will happen. I have a contrarian view, to put it mildly, on a lot of this. So, one of the first books I ever read when I was like 13 or 14, I read it fully, was 1984 by George Orwell.
Great book.
And in this book, right, it's describing an alternative version of the UK, right? And in this book, we have the Truth Ministry. And obviously, we have this entire privacy debate that we can go into, also correlating a lot with what we're speaking about here. But one of the core things is that they have this Ministry of Truth. So the government is pushing basically news to the population, telling them what is right. And they have the slogan, right? And the first part of the slogan is "War is peace." So war is peace is obviously a contradictory statement in itself, but war as like a verb, as something that is in progress, is indistinguishable from peace. So unending war and unending peace, the population can't tell the difference. So especially for, let's say, America, if there's constantly new things going on and on and on, there's something that distracts them, right? Like there's no change. So people view their lives in deltas, in change in their perception. So maybe their life is good, and then they experience the change. So when it gets better, and then when it gets worse, when it just goes flat, they don't experience anything. So you can have it's like driving in a car. If you're driving in a Porsche and you're just driving out there, you get used to that thing. So you have a change in your experience when you get there, and then it's flat, and then it goes down. So the first like point there is like war is peace, at least for the Ministry of Truth. So when I'm hearing things like what is being said here, it's like it is I would say technically true, but I think it misses the entire point of what we rather ought to aim for, right? In the book, there are 3 different continents. Okay, the continents that we're speaking about, and 2 others. And what is revealed throughout the book is that there's always war going on between the 3 continents, and they just switch around. So first it's like this versus this, right? And then the third one sends aid here, and then it's like this versus this, and they just switch it over every 10 or so, 20 or so years. So suddenly it's the Jews against, let's say, the Christians, or then it's the Muslims against the Christians. Then it's Muslims against, like, I that's on the ideological side, right? But you could also just have, like, Europe, let's say broader, like Asia, and then like the Americas. Like, there's a bunch of ways you could have that framework, but fundamentally, most of what I hear when we're talking about events like this is just how do we propagate truth upon our people. It's not necessarily like the war in itself doesn't actually matter, and the so do we get more war because of AI? I don't know. Maybe, probably not. Like, the core reason for why we get war is the same. It stays unchanged, right? There's still the reason why we have war
Isn't going to
probably a subsect of people who have some sort of political power. But
what I was saying was more of seeing it in the future as a tool in those wars. I don't think that it creates or prevents conflict, because I think human nature, unfortunately, is overwhelming. And I think
it would be nice to see, these world organizations get together before the Geneva Convention needs rewritten for a change, but we probably won't see that either.
Well, and the question on that, to bring up your point of non-proliferation, what would that non-proliferation look like, and how could governments or tech companies realistically enforce that non-proliferation when the underlying knowledge and open source tools are becoming increasingly accessible worldwide?
You can't. No, I don't mean to be so on the nose, but if there's anything we've learned, is anything and everything digital, period. I mean, they use an iPod that for nuclear stuff. I forget the exact story, but if you read the old school, like 2008, 2009, maybe 2010, the iPod Shuffle terms and conditions, along with a lot of other Apple products, they had to add that you're not allowed to use these for any nuclear purposes because somebody turned it into an armed device, like an arming device for a fucking warhead. Do you remember that?
Bombers use it with cell phones all the time.
That's what I'm saying. Anything.
Yeah.
I mean, the nerds of the internet, the techies of the internet. There's like the guy hit a line. He's like, put it online, and someone's gonna own it. That's what's happening.
Right.
AI has hit the public space and the internet. Everybody owns it, whether you realize it or not, whether you think you're using it or not. If you have a modern day smartphone, if you have a modern day music player device that connects to apps like Spotify or anything like that, you are actively using and have access to, maybe not always in the most ethical way, but have access to AI, period. That's it.
Well, and actually, you brought up Spotify. One of the things that Spotify did that generally made me a little uncomfortable is they added in a share music, like a direct messaging feature, right? And it's very similar to TikTok. So if I send you a text and say, hey, check out this song in a text message between me to you, when you open up Spotify, that file that I shared or that album that I shared with you shows up in your Spotify direct messages, just like it does on TikTok. So you have to give it access to those applications in order for it to be able to pull that data. But to kind of, since we're on the subject, on the non-proliferation, without trying to write the non-proliferation ourselves, what's one rule on the military use of AI that you think should be followed and agreed upon globally?
We do two.
Sure.
No completely autonomous units that can self-deploy. And no ordnance, I'll use the term ordnance so that we cover a much larger degree of anything, should be allowed to trigger the fire or execute or whatever you want to term, whatever term you want to use on itself. If you want to use it to analyze data and pick out targets and highlight and do charting and pick routes and describe what we should be ordering and where we should be why we should be ordering it so that we know exactly how much of what product should be going where and what ordnance we should be putting down on what areas. Fine. There needs to be a human loop between that and anything that might cost human life. Absolutely.
So essentially what you're saying is AI can be used as a planning tool to, say, minimize collateral damage, but you want a human to read that and do the execution. You don't want the computer
even if it's
itself
as simple as
making the
pressing the big red button 100%. You can use completely autonomous units for stuff that's like, hey, we've already captured this area, let's drop. And people are going to get mad about this because they're going to look at it the wrong way. I'm not saying to cost anybody their fucking job, so calm down there. But if we take over, what's that? I'm brain farting. What's that chemical in batteries?
Lithium.
If we take over a lithium mine during a war and we need it for some more technology, if you want to drop robots and have them autonomously farm that completely on their own, fucking have at it.
Or cobalt would be more
again,
more
anything
likely
on those fronts, I could give a shit less. If it's going to risk human life, period. Like anything that could so much as traumatize down to kill somebody, there needs to be a human wall at that last decision.
Absolutely. Tobias, on to you.
Genetic alteration. So either on like the creation of like just on humans, right? Like just DNA directly, or then not the DNA directly then, but then like creation of viruses and another biological warfare, I would say is a big one. I'm not really that worried about, well, rather, I don't think we can do so much about the things described earlier with like agents just running wild. I don't think you can. Sure, you might be able to do a like put up a law, but you can't like
basically the
really
agreement to
enforce
not
it.
use it for bioweapons is
And-
what you're saying.
With
right?
what you're saying, Tobias, would that also include enhancements?
Um,
I don't want to go into the realm too far of sci-fi, but
I'm more
in the sense of
think
using AI with like cybernetic prosthetics.
I'm more thinking to create like non-human beings and create like alteration. So let's say, well, there are 2 points to that, right? The first one is like viruses, something that you can just spread, and you can just
Mhm.
look for a specific gene, right? So look at, okay, what gene does, like, what's the blue eye gene, and you could just let that go, and then suddenly you've lost, 100 million
A
people
large portion of
or
people with blue
whatever.
eyes. Yeah. And let's be more realistic about it,
Yeah,
right? If
yeah.
somebody went into the Middle East and said, "Hey, you know what? I want to get rid of every Arab," right? Um, you could find a genetic link,
That
and boom,
could be done
bye
very.
bye, bye bye, bye bye Arabs. It creates
Didn't
a bioweapon.
didn't they make an episode about that? Is it the show Scorpion with
I
the like
Uh,
autistic guy? I'm pretty sure that in that show they have a person who made a virus that targets genetic markers.
so for me, the thing
It's a
that comes
long
to
time
mind
since I've
was
seen that. Oh.
well, and so the thing that comes to my mind at first was the film well, the book, more importantly, was called Inferno, and it was by Dan Brown. And the entire book, they had you thinking that somebody was going to deploy this massive bioweapon that was going to eliminate over half of the world's population. And by the end of the book, spoiler alert, it wasn't designed to eliminate half of the world's population. It was designed to make half of the world's population sterile.
That reminds me of
So,
both Aeon Flux and anything that's going to target the Genghis Khan gene.
right. So, so, I agree, Tobias. I think bioweapons is something that I think
I
should be
hadn't even
agreed
thought of
upon.
that. I
Yeah,
hadn't even thought
something
of
that
that.
we should.
That was a really cool thought on the
Yeah.
like also a really cool abstraction. Really
And terrifying,
bringing
thanks.
it contextually it's relevant, but it's a very outside the box first thought on it. So it was really cool.
Well,
Yeah.
and
Like,
it's something.
I wouldn't say it's my first thought, but the core thing that comes to my mind is drones. So automatic production and then shipping and then auto launching of drones. Like
Amazon got it.
that entire ecosystem could be fully automated, right? Like HSAT basically. So you could have a team of like 100 people building 1,000 drones a day,
Mhm.
which is
I just want
batshit.
to point
But
out
you
a
can't
really
really one
sidebar
enforce it.
thing.
Two, they
I just want to pull out a slight sidebar thing. It's ironic.
Yeah.
It's very ironic. Tobias, if I didn't know you, and know your where your heart is in with all this, I would say that it's very interesting that someone who is the poster boy for the Aryan race instantly went to the genetics. Like, I just ironic sidebar. I thought it was funny.
To be
Back
fair,
to what you were saying.
back to relevancy, he did say he was against eliminating all the blue-eyed people. So I think
I
that's
did
more
say I was
self-preservation.
against it.
Self-preservation.
Absolutely. Exactly. Covering his ass here. No, so back to what you were saying, Tobias. Sorry, that derailed.
Yeah, just on the like drone front. So like the implementation of cheap, high volume, very targeted, potentially AI driven and AI managed systems can be very like lethal. But I don't think
Mhm.
if there's one thing I would fix, that wouldn't be it. Because like we can counter it. Like we can
Mhm.
EMP, we can like there's it's supply chain that'll just be flat out like normal war. But if you implement something, I think I see it as the equivalent of a nuclear bomb. I see it as like you let it go once, and then suddenly you can't be in that part of the human world
Mhm.
for the next 100 years or 300 years or whatever until like you just
Well,
eradicate.
so
So
and on that topic, you mentioned cheap drones, right? Open models and cheap drones. Anyone can build them, right?
Yeah, 3D printer, good to
From
go.
yeah, from a deterrence
I mean, I could
standpoint,
build them at home. Like,
right? So from a deterrence standpoint, wouldn't the only answer be to make sure that if the bad actors have their hands on these weapons, the good actors have the better weapons? It's kind of like the old expression of which we use in the gun violence debate here of like the only thing that
Criminals don't
stops
care
a
if it's
bad
illegal.
well, that and the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. So when we talk about, those kinds of like proliferations, things like that, obviously there's always going to be bad actors that are going to exploit it and are not going to care about that proliferation. So isn't the only answer for that
yeah.
to
So if you wish for peace, prepare for war. Okay, civis pacem para bellum. It's a core Latin phrase from the Roman Empire. You can own, and there's I kind of made that point in my previous rant, but fundamentally that'll just be flat out war. You'll be on the same playing field as your opponent. Yes, it's targeted. Yes, it's high volume, but we are not talking 100 million people eradicated within, let's say, 3 days. We would more be talking, a couple thousand people, maybe some targeted politicians or maybe some high value individuals, maybe. Or like
That's the last
cost.
thing Iran wants to hear anymore.
yeah. Yeah, for sure.
There's another Latin. Yeah.
No, so I was just gonna say, like, the pitch to bring it back to kind of like the autonomous weapons, which what we were originally talking about. The pitch for autonomous weapons is fewer civilian casualties, more accuracy, and so from your perspective, do you think that is that factual, or is that just kind of a PR move that makes people feel better about it? Because I just don't trust anything that doesn't have some kind of moral judgment behind it, and AI is all mathematics and statistics. So
to be fair, like most of the war that we're seeing currently, they don't really actually care about the civilians. Like, sure, there's some PR, but if we're talking like, what's the moral good? So from a utilitarian point of view, right? Beckham, classic like ethics. Like, it's just what provides the most amount of net good. And if you kill someone like Saddam Hussein or something like that, the net good there, at least from like a military perspective, and if you believe he is wrong, which I would agree with, like I haven't studied him, so but
Right.
I would assume so, right? Then the net good of getting rid of an actor like that, 1,000, 10,000 people, I know,
which is insane, right? The tolerance of civilian loss, which is an insane premise to have to say, but the tolerance of acceptable civilian loss is higher than the amount of civilians he killed.
So maybe yes. So we are like 6 billion, maybe 7 billion people on this earth. If you look at just a natural standard like deviation curve of how, let's say, aggressive or how human beings behave, right? You're going to have people who are like average, that's most people, and you have people who are further good or further bad, right? More aggressive. And once in a while, you're going to hit on some of these people who are on the outer extreme of these points, right? That could be some sort of Machiavellianism, that could be narcissism, that could be psychopathy, combined with some other motive, right? Then certainly, right? Sure, they might have not done like a lot right now, but their potential, right? And this is what I'm talking about with like the potential right now for doing harm is bigger than it's ever been. And if you let an actor come in who doesn't care about long-term consequences, the consequence for the world can be massive compared to we're 6 billion people. Like it's 10,000. I know it sounds batshit crazy, but if we're purely talking utilitarianism, there's a lot of rationale in decisions like that.
I agree with you. And I see what you're mentioning. You're basically talking at the points of the midnight clock. X minutes till midnight. We've all seen it. From the realist standpoint, there's always going to be that acceptable and unacceptable and the potential and stuff like that. My worry about what you're saying is, again, I'm going to bring it back to it. We end up in the Minority Report situation where just because the potential for something exists doesn't mean it's going to happen. It also means it shouldn't be acted upon. So, I mean, it's the two sides of the coin, right? At what point do we reach that middle ground where it's acceptable to say, hey, this potential is too high and we're trending towards the action. This needs shut down. And the world, for some reason, still hasn't decided that we should all communicate and agree on this at once. And sometimes the disagreement is even more batshit crazy than the amount of tolerance we accept for the civilian loss of life.
Well, and so to tie all this together, obviously, look at history. We couldn't stop nukes. We can't stop AI. So, at this point, are we just pretending that some kind of treaty matters?
I think, Tobias, if you want to go first, let me know. But I think personally, it's too new of a dimension, right? So the way that the way that humanity thinks evolves in dimensional layers, right? The concept of a nuclear bomb was completely unfeasible. Like, yeah, cool, but it's mythology. And then somebody was like, but what if? And all of a sudden, this new study of information and this new category that got hyper-focused in such a short period of time unlocked this whole new dimension of information into the world of nuclear physics. AI is that bubble. AI is a level of thinking above what we were previously able to even imagine. Like, yeah, Terminator and stuff like that, imagination, fine. But as a real implementation, and now we have, Tobias, I don't know your history. I'm going to use you as a really crude example because I'm not in the AI bubble. But Tobias, before he had ever known of AI, it came out to be, and decided to one day, sitting at home, pull a fucking feather out of his ass and dive into it. Now here he is. Like, this is one of those things where this new dimension of thinking is out there that anybody can get into, but we haven't delved into it enough to know enough about it to really start laying down the scaffolding for what's acceptable.
You were, Tobias, correct me if I'm wrong, but Rowan, you were actually pretty accurate when you said, hey, I don't know your situation, but you laid out the situation, because Tobias, I believe you started out designing websites at like 14 years old, right? And then it moved into automation, and then it moved into now AI building. Like, it's and you are completely self-trained, correct?
So yeah, I started programming when I was like 11, right? So I mean, everything I've basically ever done has been self-learned in the American sense. I think it's just the rational way of attaining information. I would say there's a high correlation with how AI is being built and everything I've done in the past. It's just development work, right? I'm not necessarily sitting there doing like alterations to the inference model that's running the entire thing. Like, I don't. That's not when I say
that's
like
the whole
when I say
point of generational AI, right?
It's
right. Abstraction away from the developer, and it's as a developer, it's such a weird thing because everything's always been like, analog here for hello, I reached this point in the code when you're doing debugging versus start it and fuck off.
I've built full applications, right? Not a single line of code. And we're like, so we get paid like, let's say $50K to build an application. And then AI does the entire thing. Obviously with a lot of human supervision. And like, we have like a set of actual developers.
You need to build your rule trees and refine it once it's done doing a generation to trim out the abstractions and the the irregularities outside of what you're intending for, sure, but that's still, it's from, as a developer, I'm excited for this part, but as a developer, isn't that so crazy how little hands-on you really need to be on?
I think I've come in at the perfect time, right? Like I've learned how to do HTML, CSS, JS, like PHP, whatever, all these things by code when I was very young. And I just came to the conclusion it's too much work to write code, like when I was that age. So I just started doing other shit and got good at chess and all these other things. And now I have the entire mental model for implementing it, right? I understand it and I can run a company around it, but I don't have to go into the actual back end. Like I don't have to do any of that shit. I have developers hired, so even if we needed to, I would still give it to them. But fundamentally, the it has opened up a lot. And I was in the Journal of Commerce by S&P Global, so the guys who run S&P 500. They're called S&P Global, and they have like different newsletters. I was in the S&P Global for like supply chain logistics, and we did a piece on development with AI in logistics, basically on how tools like Claude Code was kind of changing up the game. And the core point of that was um, the ability for beginners to build a prototype has never been higher. Okay, like anyone can make a prototype. And if you can make a prototype, what that basically is intent engineering. So when you're able to articulate your intent in a way that isn't just raw technical code, if you can just vibe code it with your, like, you can articulate your intent with, I kind of want this and then I want
If you're
that.
good
And
at
then,
Googling.
right. Yeah. If you're good, yeah, then you'll be excellent at that. Right. If you're good at ranting, if you're good at articulating your opinions cleanly and neatly in a structured manner, also
From multiple
called
perspectives, because sometimes it's just a matter of wording it the right way, right? And it doesn't matter
100%.
how well you articulate from your way of thought. How is your model thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the newer models, right? It's only very recent that we're able to do this. So with models like Opus 4.7, I use all my models on the highest possible compute always. I just select the top one, most expensive one, just on max, right? Because it is able to infer my intent, not exactly what I say. So if you use an older model, let's say we use like Kimi 2.5, or let's say Grok 4, or any of them basically, right? Sonnet. A lot of them you'll need to articulate what you
Very
want.
strictly. Very
Yeah,
strictly.
you need to articulate what you want, not what you need. So I would need to the way that we build automation to provide a bit of quick context. When we did development workflows, like automation workflows, I developed a methodology on how to build these like very efficiently so that we can scale it. And it consists of 3 parts: TOO, trigger, operation, output. So what starts the workflow? What value does it create? Like what script is running? And then how is that value articulated to the user? Like what's the output of it? Is it an email? Is it a dashboard? Wherever. If you speak with the weaker models, you basically must articulate what you want in that framework. I want an email every morning at 3 a.m. that pulls together all of my Gmail and Slack inboxes, and then I track how many mails I get over the last, like on average every single day over the last 2 weeks. And if I can articulate that, then it can build. With the weaker models. With the newer ones, you just say, hey, I'm getting all these emails and I'm also getting some Slack messages, but I'm not really sure what I should use them for. I was wondering if I could maybe get some sort of insight into them. And then it'll infer, based on that, its understanding of me, the intent. So we're moving into intent engineering instead of the traditional like prompt engineering, especially with the
Just
better
for
models.
anybody who uses social media that watches this side of clip, it's the difference of the AI looking at the meta tag that you put on a video. So you do hashtag AI, hashtag politics for this, and going exactly down those 2 routes for its development versus you saying hashtag AI and politics and it looking at those 2 meta tags grabbing everything synonymous with it and associating all of it to figure out the most likely path that you then most likely audience you really meant to achieve.
Right.
So instead of having 2 points, while you're still using just 2 points and ending with 2 points, now you're ending with 50 points and just the ones that you really realize you needed highlighted.
So
I can screen share something quickly here that I have running. Sorry.
so real
Hello?
real quick, go ahead, and then I'm going to bring it back to the concept of military and frontier models. So go ahead.
While he gets his screen share up, I'm going to pick on you, Tobias. So first off, I didn't get to say it earlier because I'm ADHD and I forgot to. Congratulations on moving into an office and moving from a hands-on to more of a delegation
Yeah.
role.
Yeah.
Truly, I know that's an awesome step. But I'm going to pick on you here. So anybody who thinks he's super young and has a baby face, I want to point out that he said he started learning when he was like 11 or something like that. And one of his languages he taught himself was PHP. You're old if you know PHP. That is deprecated into oblivion.
Yeah, I know. I don't actually know PHP, but I've written.
He's going to start. He's going to program that next AI model on Ruby on Rails for us.
I programmed my background for my MySpace page.
Yeah, my Neopet shop is sick, bro.
Dude, it's kind of crazy that those were the days where like I built
that
the
was
background of my
intro.
MySpace page in HTML. Like,
yeah, that was intro to programming when I was a kid, because that was like what everybody hit the ground running with.
right.
And now most people didn't do any editing to it, and they just found a generator and downloaded the HTML. But
So Tobias, just to counter
Is that an
what
association net? Sorry.
So to counter what Rowan said,
Yeah.
How old are you?
19.
He's in his upper 20s at least, right?
19.
You
19.
taught yourself PHP and you're 19. You wasted some time, brother.
Okay, I built some tools with PHP. I'm not like an expert. I'm way better at
The
like
only
JS.
reason why most developers I know really liked PHP when they took a first glance at it, and let me know if you were in the same route, was you could abstract the creation of variables.
I think it was just like a lot.
Like
Keep in mind,
interpolation and
it's
stuff like
like-
that
it's like
really,
5
really
years
rose to
since I-
popularity in PHP.
So this is my Obsidian brain.
I
And what
knew
this
it. I
is,
knew this was Obsidian. I knew it was a net mask. This is so good, dude. This is going to break so many people's brains when they see it, though.
yeah.
Also, for anybody who first sees this, yes, the mitochondria is indeed the powerhouse of the cell.
that's all I could think about.
I scraped basically all of YouTube. I spent like $1,000 or so scraping the top like 2,000 something creators and then the top 200 videos on all of them, and then running them through AI analysis to condense it all to have like a knowledge corpus. So what this is my Claude second brain. So this is using Andrew Carpathy's second brain structure, which
Define
is
it.
Sorry?
You said you're using what?
Andrew Carpathy, he's like one of the biggest like AI developers who's publishing stuff on GitHub. He has like auto research, a bunch of different tools that you can use. And I've been using Obsidian for about 3 years. And previously I would like write the actual text in these files myself. But now I have like different automations that's automatically keeping this up to date. So to make this very, very simple, okay? Every single point here is a file, okay? Every single file is either, let's say, a transcript or, a file related to our company. And all of these files are hyperconnected. So, like, under me, it would be linked to my company, and then my company is linked to my clients, and then my clients is linked to my conversation with the clients, and then my conversation with the clients is linked to different keywords, and then those keywords are linked to different resources like YouTube courses or whatever. And then all of that is like, it's hyper connected. So whenever interconnected. So all of these points is a file. Whenever I ask my AI, whenever I ask Claude, it will pull data from here to get the reply. So this was the point of this was from the context engineering we had earlier, right? Where you need to give it the right information. It already has the right information. So I've prompted my AI to basically use internal Fermi estimates on what I'm saying to it. So it basically maps out what are the different things he could be saying just purely based on the prompt. Let me go and dive into each of those possibilities in my second brain with everything I've ever said to anyone since I was like 14. So it has everything basically about me mapped out. It has all my
So, like, did
like,
you download like your Facebook history? They had that data thing. You downloaded all of your Facebook data and dumped it in here.
I have all my not Facebook because I don't use Facebook for anything.
You know what I mean?
But I
Like,
have
you downloaded your social
yes.
media history files. So I'd love you to zoom out. I apologize. I know I'm interrupting you. I am so sorry.
Come on, please.
I want you to zoom out. So I just noticed you drug something. Is this 3-dimensional, right? Obsidian uses 3-dimensional?
This is 2D.
2D, okay. I thought
Yeah,
that was a
there
3-dimensional.
I would
extensions
just
that are
like
3D.
to point something out
I
here.
don't see the value of it.
From what
Go
I'm
ahead,
looking at, this will tell you how stupid I am. Tobias, I think your eyeball has cancer. Doesn't look good.
So, I had already made a lowbrow joke at it saying that mitochondria is indeed the powerhouse of the cell. But
It's a
what
nipple.
this is, and this is going to bring it down way more in the layman's terms, is you said this is what your AI is internalized to, which means if you look at it, it kind of looks like a universe, right? And every time he has a new file, his universe is ever expanding as he is literally the god of his AI's universe. He is spawning every time he opens his mouth or types something or does anything. It expands the universe of knowledge of this AI.
Right, exactly.
So
it
in
has,
each
for
one
example,
of those
this here,
lines is a connection.
entities.
It's an orbit. Yeah, it's an orbit. It's a connectivity. It correlates to that in a way where if he says something and it finds something relevant in one, it can check all the other connections of that one for the next thing, or if anything is more relevant, to return the most relevant information to him along those chains of thought. You ever say like, "Oh, I lost my train of thought"? This is the visual train of thought.
So this is Dominic
That's
Mayani. I know Robert has
That's
spoken
fucking
with him.
wild.
We can like certainly
Obsidian's
also find like,
gross, but it can be very overwhelming at first until you start like you have to adapt the way you look at things a bit to really utilize Obsidian.
Dude.
right. So you can see here, like for example, all the things tagged with AI agents. So whenever I do a query about AI agents, I get the AI gets an index of all things I know that are correlating to AI agents, right? And this is so I work with the top 1 to 5% of AI users. So when I jump on a call with them, they already have a pretty good idea of how things work. And honestly, most of them are like quite complex. And I believe it also to be my duty to try and push that barrier. One, because I find it very fascinating, right? I want to see what can be done and how we can push the limits of this. But then also secondly, right? If like we need to like have the right strategy, and the only way that you can do that is with the right data, and the only way you can have the right data is by pulling it from the right sources. So I personally have every single WhatsApp message. So I pulled all my WhatsApp logged in here, all my emails, all my Spotify listening history, all my meetings, all my phone calls, like basically every single piece of data, all my LinkedIn posting, all my LinkedIn DMs. And I think Robert knows how many LinkedIn DMs I've sent. I mean, I've at least sent like 3,000 for him, right?
Yeah. And I just want to real quick, I just want to acknowledge something because I firmly believe in giving people their flowers. From where we were running Dripify campaigns on LinkedIn a year and a half ago to where you are now, brother. I am so damn proud of you because you have grown exponentially
Thank you.
in this. Like this, you are without a doubt one of the most inspiring young people on the fucking planet, dude. I think there's going
Tobias.
to come a point
I
where
appreciate
everyone
that.
knows your name.
Tobias, how comfortable would you be dumping your DNS cache into this? No,
I
is
mean,
that one of
honestly,
is that one of
not
those
a.
data sections we're gonna leave out?
I mean, I did take all my Perplexity memories, so it has a lot, but
Yeah, but you used other browsers before that, so I'm just saying there's some devices that if we went ahead and did
Christ.
that DNS cache, because I mean I'm sure you cleared your cookies and your cache, but how often were you flushing your DNS? All right, there's some stuff on there that I'd love to see pop up in this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I bet.
it
Busty
probably
Blonde
wouldn't
gets railed.
even be like I trust like probably wouldn't affect the AI's output. I think the incredible thing is the more data it has, the more accurate it just basically will
because
be.
it can
if
make
it's
the
right.
correlations and figure out
Right.
like, well, and I'm not saying this is the visual representation, right? But you have the outer ring, which is like probably more recent things, the things that you're trending more things that have been refined. And then you have this inner area where it's kind of like, look, these were things that like, well, yes, they're about you and things you've done. We don't need to touch these near as often because we've determined like
Yeah.
90% of the time it's irrelevant data.
Which
And
one's
it's
the
pre-analyzed,
areola?
so whenever they're
Okay, I said I see an eyeball, and Ryan's
degeneracy is kicking in.
Right. I said, oh, an eyeball, and then Ryan's like, no, it's tit. Like, what the fuck, man?
I'm only a man.
He's been too
There's,
quiet. He needs to get a few lines in, so he's in some of the clips for this episode.
No, not even. Listen. I'm like sitting
There-
here learning
Oh my
shit
God.
as we go because I'm like, you guys are fucking. You're talking like, I'm amongst a lot of my friends. I'm the nerd, and I got no idea what the fuck we're talking about.
Dude, listen, we are in a room with two people that are exponentially smarter than us. That's all
I mean,
I'm gonna say.
categorically, let's
honestly,
say it that way. Categorically,
seeing this in Obsidian is actually this really starts to make things make a little bit more sense with all the interconnectivity and all the correlation of the data. But yeah, when you start talking about, there's a lot of acronyms that I don't understand.
Yeah.
It's just fine. That's how
Kinda like
we'll toss a new one at him. What about KISS? Do you know what KISS means?
keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, attaboy.
Yep.
Go ahead, Tobias. We'll stop cutting you off.
I lost my.
You have an AI for that.
Well, yes,
You
exactly.
haven't.
I barely think anymore. It's kind of funny, right? I was pitching AI to some lead, right? And they were like, I hate AI because it doesn't like it's never personalized and like you can tell it immediately. And I had booked her in with purely AI. And she was like, I really like what you were doing. That's clearly not AI where you're DMing me personally. And I could just tell it was your style based on our conversations. And I had to break her entire worldview because it was like so far away from, because it was just, I sent to like 50 people I'd had conversations with in the past, just like that. And, you know,
you've given it so much sample data that it can emulate you in a way where she genuinely believed there was a direct correlation direct communication happening.
Right. One of the things that I would like to note, right? We joked a bit about, right? Is like with the girls, right? Having like this opinion of what you like. There's a kind of Aristotelian way of questioning where basically he would go up to people and like ask them, what do you believe about X? And if they need to think it through or if they need to like speak it out via dialogue to get to a conclusion, then they don't have an internal reasoning system. So the goal of this somewhat is to take all the raw data and then categorize them all, like store them, and then analyze all of them to get to concrete worldviews. So the critique he had was that most people have data, they don't have beliefs. So if you go up and ask a person, what is your type? And they don't have an immediate answer, that indicates that they don't have the internal reasoning mechanism in their brain because they haven't thought it through. So what this is somewhat doing is basically mapping that out. So whenever anyone asks me anything, one, that thing will have the answer probably better than I will have. But then second of all, it's also making it very clear to me that if anyone asks me my type, I can answer them bluntly, right? But like, and just the frame perception of like, hey, have I actually thought it through? Or is it just, oh, this is happening, or this is the, I maybe have a sort of view, but it's not actually mine. It's just the amalgamation of the different takes I've heard.
You worded that brilliantly, and I'm sorry I was laughing in the background, but when you said about if it takes them a moment to respond, who was that politician who took a moment to respond and even glanced at his lawyer before answering, do you like fucking kids?
Wait, what?
Is that
Somebody asked, it was a politician, was basically, he was being questioned or depositioned about like possibly having fucked kids, and they asked him like, do you like kids in that manner? And it took like 5 seconds, and he even glanced at his lawyer before saying no. And it's like,
bro,
you're exactly right. It's either it's either that your belief is questionable and you know that, or you don't have a solid belief. Because the answer is, do you like fucking kids? No. That's how long that shit should take to say.
Well, and I think, dude, and just from what Tobias was saying,
while you're talking,
like, so Tobias, from what you were saying, if we dump all of our personal data into an AI software, right? If our brain doesn't have that reasoning of like, hey, what's your type? Well, technically, that AI knows you better than you do, because it's taking your every piece of data, every reel, every photo on Instagram or on Facebook, and God forbid, every porn site, like all of those things, and it can answer that question for you like that without any thought process in it. Like that's a scary thought, because that leads to kind of tie this back into the whole idea of like military use and even police use. This becomes a way to, I guess, craft the next generation of polygraphs, right? So if you go in, we pull all of your servers and everything else, you get the warrant, pull all of that information, pump all that data into the model, and instead of needing an actual polygraph, you get the answers right then and there. And you still give the person enough rope.
Yeah.
And if they choose to hang themselves, great. If not, the AI is going to kick the chair out from underneath them and bye-bye. Like, that's kind of a scary thought, that AI eventually will know humans better than humans. Scary thought, right?
It was Bill Clinton, by the way. Was a politician I was talking about.
That doesn't fucking surprise me.
They asked him to put himself in the mind of Jeffrey Epstein and asked him if he likes him young. And he goes, well, first of all, and then has like a 5-second pause.
Well,
that's not true.
So that, I can see why that's a thing, because they said, can you put yourself into the mind of Jeffrey Epstein? And I think his pause and the look at the lawyer is kind of like, should I even answer this?
Well, to be fair, to put this clear, he asked it. The lawyer broke it down for him, what they were really asking, and then there was still this long ass delay. So like there was no contemplating the question. This had already been dumbed down for you. At the end of the day, no matter whose shoes you're sitting in, if somebody asks you if you like kids, your answer should be no.
A pretty quick no.
It shouldn't be a thought, right?
And there should be no affirmation like, hey, not affirmation, confirmation. Hey, is this the right answer?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, so let me go back to for a second to this, what we were just talking about. So what you're telling me is that you can take a model that has all this information dumped in, personal information, and feasibly you could ask it a question and say, like, let's say, some social problem comes up, unclean water in your city, and it's something you've never talked about, you never had a conversation about, and it could extrapolate all the data from this, and it could reasonably predict what your opinion would be on it.
I think the problem would need to be a bit more
Yeah.
direct, but yeah, it
Yeah.
could infer, like he said, this is inference programming. It can infer based on how you've handled similar things. He's answered this in 2 parts already, right, Tobias? You
Yeah.
said before,
But I
new
can-
subject line, different filler.
So I compare this to like the
the
political tests. You know, they say, well, which side of the aisle are you on? And then they ask you questions and you answer them. And there's always a level of like, okay, this is what I think. And okay. But based off of your data that you have plugged into this, that AI system will tell you, hey, guess what? Surprise, motherfucker. You're not a Republican. You're a Democrat. Like, you're able to learn about yourself.
Yeah.
In a sense. The subconscious things you do on a day-to-day basis,
So,
you learn.
well, yeah, exactly. So we do a lot of talent tests, right, for our company, because it's just like objectively a good thing to do. And if we just filter for only mine so that I don't leak, here, this is just from mine, right? When I feed the AI, I have given it about 10 different talent tests, like personality testing, whatever, about me, that it has the concrete data. So all of this is just like when it makes the decision, okay, what would a person who is just reflective, flexible, and competitive reply to this question, right? What would, and there's just like 20 pages of like actual context, like some with the interesting slide. So like, for example, on this one here. So what is my motivator? What's my inner drive to accomplishing anything, right? So you can have like, you can see mine would be specialist. So when it goes through and actually tries to answer the questions, it'll also just like, okay, I can see here that the human drive, I don't do it because I want to sit there working with other people. I want to do it because I want to become a specialist at a given thing. And I want to sit and think about great problems, right? And it'll take that and infer my conclusion based on that. It obviously won't get to a exact answer, but it'll probably, like, if I gave this to my team member, I could probably I could just have them, oh, what would Tobias think about this? And it would answer well, right? What would be an example question we could give to it? Do we have something like quick?
Rowan, I feel like you got the best idea here.
Repeat the question. Sorry, I was being snarky in a DM.
What could be a question we could ask the second brain to try and identify whether or not it actually, like, if I would agree with what it says?
Yeah, it'll answer as if it's you. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is that hypothetical, or are you about to give the second, like a specialized second brain?
I'm gonna ask
to
it.
see how...
I'm gonna ask it right now. So just like a one-line question. What do you think about Trump, or like anything? I don't care. Just that might actually be a good one.
Who owns the majority of media in America? News media.
Oh boy.
No, I knew that was
That's
gonna.
a question. But that's pretty
Let's see this-
objective.
Actually,
pretty
I have
objective,
I have a
right?
better one. I have a better one that applies to
yeah.
the show. Tobias, what is the biggest lie about AI in business right now?
About AI in business.
Probably the ROI rate.
Yeah. Okay, I just started it here. I'm just gonna start screen sharing. It'll probably take like, I have it on, again, I use the top model, so it'll take a second or two for it to spin up. But let's see here. And it's just
How long do you think it'd be before
through...
Internet Explorer announces the first AI model?
Bro.
I don't fucking know.
That's a good joke.
I didn't catch it.
I said,
Oh.
how long do you think before Internet Explorer announces the first AI model? Because it's always so slow, it's still loading. It doesn't even know AI exists yet.
All those poor kids still heading to Area 51.
I love that meme. It's a meme. It's just Internet Explorer on an airplane seat, and it says, "On my way to Area 51." And the longer it takes for that meme to find its way to you, the funnier it is.
So with this, you could obviously use quicker models. And as I mentioned, I always try and use like Opus on Macs. The biggest lie.
Did I
actually
not
agree
tell
with
you
this.
it's ROI? Did I not tell you it's ROI?
Yeah, it's the AI itself. But I think honestly, it took this from a call. So like I've said this basically verbatim, not fully verbatim, but AI is the UVP, its unique value proposition, right? It's the unique mechanism that we can use to attain the goal. But if the thing we're striving towards of the current position we're in is not aligned with the strategy that we apply, it's basically irrelevant.
AI can only do so much depending on the environment you're trying to plug it into. And so the cost of AI versus every company in the world thinking it needs to be plugged into every possible fucking hole they can find, like especially in America right now. So I think this is a worldwide thing, but I can only speak for America. The company I work with, hands are primarily American hands that we trade with, and they are Genghis Khans. If there's a hole, they're trying to fill it with AI, and it's gross and it's dumb and it's causing all this extra infrastructure to try and be designed to support AI data centers. It's causing all these shortages in hardware.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, 99.9999% of the projects they're trying to use it for aren't projects that should be scaled with it. There are very specific use cases in which the benefit you're going to get out of it is going to yield a value that really warrants the use of it. We use it very limited in my industry, which is a lot of like construction. Like one of the ones that I had helped build recently looks at images that are submitted to tell us if we're using the right gauge of wire, if it's being buried deep enough underground, and it assesses analytics of the photos that are being submitted to determine whether or not certain compliances or whatever rule trees were built for the contract region geodata for where that's being done at. And that saves hundreds of thousands of man hours of looking at that stuff and calling and transferring data and stuff as long as it's doing accurately. But there's some companies who are like, hey, let's pay for this $1,000 a month AI software to build me a Google spreadsheet to tell me how my sales are doing. Fuck off.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't say
And
I'm
part of
helping
that's-
on that front.
Yeah, I would say part of that is the seller's problem where it's, hey, I have this solve all. It's I wasn't originally going to say seller. I was going to say the marketing in general. AI is kind of marketed as the holy grail of company solutions. And well, don't get me wrong, genuinely impressive what can be achieved with it. It's a matter of just because you could doesn't mean you should.
Right.
It's the first time ever that you're able to buy intelligence directly. So in a scalable manner, previously you haven't been able to, like, you'd need to hire a person and then you'd need to train them and then there's a boot up time. But now, like with AI, you have it on an API subscription, right? And you can just have, and when I say intelligence, I mean intelligence as in it can replicate me to honestly, let's say 70% of the way there. So if you think of paying me for a service, I can pay an AI to give 70% of the output of me just automatically. So what things in the business would it be worth it for me to buy back my time with, right?
That's sorry, that is really intelligent because let's abstract that one step further. You hire 70% of Tobias, and then you also pay for a data reliquary, right? And then you will pass all that information to Tobias and allow him to infer the solutions from this massive source of data. So say you want to build a new website. You pay for this massive repository of data all around any and all tools around website building, and then you pass it through Tobias's second brain, of how he would use these in the best possible ways to achieve what you're asking for. And now you've taken a developer with a developer's brain and handed him all of the data he needs to provide you the solution you're looking for. And it's being done like that. The ramp up
So-
time, the R&D, all of it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. So the way that we are realistically accomplishing that thing is by doing discovery calls with the clients, right? So we have like weekly calls with them, and we use the transcript of that to like drive the decision making. So, for example, BlackBerry, it is one of our kind of clients we're working with now. What we're doing is like all the calls we have, I'm getting better and better at asking questions, and then I'm letting the VP of sales just rant about all the things that they would want to do and the problems they have and all these things, and then I can just draw the inference based on that. So my AI automatically
You're
does
just
the
grabbing
proposal.
the Gemini notes from your meeting and tossing them into your AI.
Even better, it's automatically be thrown into the AI. So the actual second brain here, right, is automatically being updated with all WhatsApp, all meetings, all phone calls, all LinkedIn messages, all iMessage daily with all context fully. So it's uploaded into the archive and then it's analyzed on a daily basis. So
With the
it's
voice messages, how often does it struggle with I apologize, just because this is interesting to me on this point, because you're using AI for something totally different. You have much more human variable in yours. How much does it struggle with like voice message interpretation for like accents and stuff like that with the translation accurately?
you have OpenAI Whisper, which is quite good. Like so I can here Whisper Flow. So you have Whisper Flow, and then you have we just use the top of the line models. It's just an OpenAI API call. It's just one call, boom,
So it's
boom.
just getting better all the time is the answer ultimately.
Yeah,
It's
not
not
up
really
to
a
me.
worry. By the time you got into this bubble, we had already progressed enough that it's pretty accurate 90% of the time.
Yeah. I just use the best possible model. I try not to, like, there's a lot of these developers who build their own tools and try and game the system instead of
Don't
paying the
reinvent the wheel.
$12. You already have fucking brilliant guys building these tools, and I don't want to sit there managing and doing maintenance. So that's another point. Sure, we will have a lot more systems being built, but these systems demand maintenance, and maintenance is surprisingly hard to do with AI. Like, like genuinely. So, like when we sell projects here, we take $1,000 per month in support per tenant we add. So, let's say we build an application for each white label they add. We take $1,000 a month for them in pure maintenance of adding that in their entire user base to our platform. So that's like for 100 users, each paying 100 a month. We're taking, that's like a shit ton of user input, right? I mean, you need to ensure that the application can scale. I feel like I'm going too technical here, but there it is it's opening up a lot of doors, and I think the people who will succeed in it is people who adapt to it. It's not people who are like, this is the future and this is what AI is going to be, and this is like AI is going to be drones in the air with AI. No, this is what it is right now. I'm going to use the best possible models that we have available right now and act on it in accordance with that. If something disturbs the entire industry in 3 months, okay, then I'm just going to switch up,
Just going to pivot.
right?
Yeah, you're going to pivot, right? Pivot. Yeah. So speaking of pivoting, I love this because I'm learning a lot. But to kind of bring it back to the topic that we were originally on, which was deterrence, escalation, and the cold hard reality. Obviously, frontier capability, at least here in the United States, lives at X, Meta, Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, the big names. And so looking forward into a new age of warfare, it's safe to say that these companies, their facilities, specifically their data centers, are at that point valid military targets. And in that case, I don't think we're seeing bombings happen, but we are seeing cybersecurity attacks. So on that note, what safeguards can you put in place for that other than the ones that already exist? Or are we not there yet until we really reach quantum computing?
You're reaching that dimension, like the thing I mentioned again. So like more ideas keep popping into my head currently, just because combinations of what Tobias has said and other realizations. This becomes a war in a data perspective, which I wanted to use the word information, but we're going to use data. Think about right now, one of the biggest risks that we have is the way in which we communicate. So there were ground troops, etc. AI gets far enough and we use a certain band with a certain code type, and if you don't have it right, your radios don't pick it up. All right. Tobias tells his AI to scan it for an afternoon, and tomorrow they can listen to every word you say.
Right.
Like if you are in a room with Wi-Fi, you can locate your exact movements in that room without any cameras. Without any
your
weapons.
routers can be used as LiDAR.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. When I was like still in school, right, in like not even that wasn't like middle school, we would install a software on our computers and plug it into the Ethernet cable, and we could basically see all traffic going on the school network. So all websites being opened, by what IP, right? By what computer, which you shouldn't be able to do. Imagine what and this is like 15-year-olds doing it, right? Imagine what
It's crazy.
I am not I'm not specialized in cybersecurity, by the way. Like I'm specialized in like service application of AI, right? This is just the natural
it's just playing around with your school computers and stuff like that. We got in trouble with the same stuff. We realized if you put it into safe mode and unplug the Ethernet cable, you could access the domain users, and then you can just add yourself. And when you plug back in the Ethernet cable, you were an admin on the network because it was awful. That was Windows XP, by the way. But
I loved Windows XP.
Yes.
Oh, it's a beautiful operating system. Awful with security. There's a very good reason why it was deprecated.
Yeah. And so continuing on the topic of that frontier models, right? Big picture here, if the US and China are the only two nations that can train frontier models, does that mean that everybody else is pretty much just picking what model to die under? Like,
getting the info that it's just US and China.
I'm talking the major players training frontier models.
I'll reiterate my question.
No, seriously. I mean,
but I'm
where
saying
else?
Japan and Russia, if you think that they don't have frontier models, that's insanity. Right
Again,
now,
we're talking about
investing.
inequality. And we're talking about inequality, right? So
they might outsource it to some degree, but it's happening.
It's absolutely happening. But to say that there is any countries further ahead than the United States and China would be I think intellectually dishonest. The United States and China are the two that are at the top of the race. Ultimately, one of the two is going to win. So you're not going to see fucking Uganda or Zimbabwe come out on top. All right. You're probably not going to see Russia come out on top. You may see some Europeans, but I think a lot of that's going to piggyback.
I'm just saying I'd have to look into it more, but I'd be genuinely surprised if Japan isn't dumping money into this.
Well,
that's two different things, right? There's a difference between putting money into it. I think if you look at Open Router here,
that's why I'm asking. I'm looking for information. I'm not challenging anything. I'm looking for a better breakdown because this is the news side of it to me.
Right.
Can you see my screen share? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty concrete. It's interesting how there's been a spike in model usage over the last couple of months with Quen.
But let's for a second. Let's go look at that leaderboard.
Speaking, you can just just this one. Depends on.
Yeah, look at the leaderboard. American company, Chinese company, American company. I believe, where was the other one? Oh, this is on Open Router. Okay, you're looking at Open Router.
This is not necessarily the global one, but this is in production applications. So like most production applications
Okay.
uses Open Router, or like
Yeah, see,
especially with automation.
I haven't seen this yet. That's why I was asking, because I was just asking from like a bystander point of view. What I would say is
Yeah.
like an average way of thinking for somebody who's not aware of this data, but is
Market
kind of
share.
in the tech industry. It's genuinely surprising to see it narrowed down to just these two so hard.
Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, right? Like
Top
if
3
you look at
American
it here,
companies.
yeah, like it's basically accounting for 17 plus 17 plus 12, right? Like half of the usage.
I mean, and
is
looking at the
American.
numbers, it's not even close, right?
Yeah.
Fourth place isn't even half of first place.
And if you look at again the models, AI models,
Chinese company.
Anthropic,
Minimax is a Chinese company.
Gemini, GPT.
Yeah, once again, top 3
Yeah.
U.S. companies.
So
and
that's
then
number
Moonshot.
4. Yeah,
Minimax,
0.5.
that's Chinese company. DeepSeek,
American companies
Chinese
for the top
company.
3. Cue the eagle noise in the clip. One of the things I want to point out that I find really interesting, and it may mean nothing, but it seems like an interesting correlation. You have America, who is probably looking at this for winning the next race, and then you have its biggest competitor is the country that we pay to make all of our computer hardware. So they have our money and they have the factories.
Well, and that is why there is this big push within the United States of manufacturing chips here.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, it would absolutely be amazing. So that comes back to my question of, as of the current moment, if the US and China can train frontier models, is every other country just... I'm trying to figure out a better way to word this. Is every other country just picking which empire's API to die under? I mean, honestly.
I mean, I'd say so. This feels like the aeronautics, right?
Yeah, right.
And I think there's as much as I'll give credit to China where it's due with their ability to do things. If this falls under, and it has, like, there's no if. Let's erase the word if. I never said it. This is falling under America's viewing of a defense budget item, which means the resources that we're dedicating financially and man hours is going to be disgusting. I don't know China's aspect on that, but I feel like.
And then, well, but then on the flip side of that, you have a lot of American legislators right now that are they're pushing for massive safeguards on AI, and so one of them is a pause, until they can figure out those safeguards. So if at the end of the day, if the U.S. unilaterally paused AI, China obviously wouldn't. Given that, is there really any ethical argument left from an engineering perspective for individual engineers to abstain?
No. I would do note, right, that America has a bigger incentive to be at the top of the leaderboards than China has. So China is significantly less of an open market compared to America, right? They have a lot more data than America has. So sure, America is trained. We had this debate earlier with like partially illegal data, blah, 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 right? In China, they don't have that concern because, okay, who cares? There's definitely some internal regulation in China, but they've been
Your
scraping all our data.
Your data? You mean our data?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more institutions that don't necessarily want to be at the top, right? If you look at like it's Minimax and it's DeepSeek. And if you look at who DeepSeek are selling to, that's primarily, as I understand it, American companies. So they're selling into the American market. Minimax, as I understand it, is selling into the American market. It's the top models that they have. Why would they share that with? Why would they even sell it to America? Why wouldn't they just use it
So,
on their own population?
I'm
So they can.
wondering.
It's information warfare. They're doing it so they can pull data from Americans. It's the same concept of like TikTok, for example. I was always of the opinion that TikTok was nothing more than a data mining
100%.
usage. Yeah, I mean, they were essentially pulling data from users, especially like you saw the TikTok trends, right? They are essentially pulling data on the next generation of Americans, and they're going to figure out information warfare, how to switch and how to influence that generation in their own way.
Well,
I mean, it's psychological warfare is what it is.
so there's another side of this, right? China has certain laws. I forget what
Mhm.
state it was. Ryan, me and you talked about this months ago. There was a state that said any area of our land that is owned by China must be returned to America, and they brought to light something that I feel like might be at play here. I have no proof, so none of this is ironclad fact. But China has a rule for its citizens that, as a citizen, anything and everything that you have access to information-wise, the government reserves the right to come and question you or request from you, and you have to provide it at risk of going to jail. Doesn't matter what contracts you signed. It doesn't matter any of that shit. If it's yours, it's theirs. Which is why we didn't want them owning our agriculture, because they know how we're making stuff, or they know what we're leaning on, and allows them to make bioweaponry that could take out our agriculture. But what does that matter if we're plugging all of our data into servers and they can go over and say, give us all of America's data?
Right.
Yeah. The company would be breaking American laws if they abide
China
by
doesn't care. They're going to throw them in jail. So you
Yeah,
either
no,
go to American jail or you go to our jail. Which one's cushier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very well put.
So
I think
I
it
have one
isn't
last.
as pushy.
Sorry, my phone keeps ringing. I have to keep declining it. So ultimately, this is going to come down to the final note. The AI race, not necessarily just about development. It is about energy, right? And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of the strategic moves from the Trump administration in regards to Venezuela and in regards to Iran, in regards to making energy more favorable to us, things like that. Training and interference of scale needs gigawatts. So ultimately, isn't the AI race right now just an energy war or an energy race?
My first thought on that is that the capability of the AI model scales with compute, right? Just like with our old, like the first computers we see, right? They would have like these huge sensors, and then now you can get the same performance in a small, right? So there's like the optimization of the actual model, but then there's also just if you 10x the amount of compute to one AI, you double the results,
Okay.
broadly speaking.
Hang on, guys. I gotta pause this for a second. I just got a text from my dad. Call quick. I might need to go to the hospital. So hang on.
Oh shit. Do what you gotta do.
All right. Unfortunately, I have an emergency, so I'm gonna have to cut this short. But before we go, Rowan, Tobias, tell everyone where they can follow you.
So you can find me on LinkedIn. Here, let me just pull them up. So you can either find me on our website, trymurph.com. On this website, you can take a 30-second quiz, and it will help you identify the single automation that would make the most impact in your business and basically give you a time audit in where you can get back your time. You can find me on my LinkedIn page where I post currently twice a day, probably getting it back to once a day on all things AI.
Okay.
And our general founder journey.
Okay. Perfect. Rowan.
Right now, you can only find me on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it nowadays with @Rowan Micheals, same way it's spelled in the videos.
Perfect. So Ryan is not back yet, but you can find him on X and Instagram at Ryan Thomas Talks. You can follow me pretty much everywhere at Real Robert Her. Instagram is Real Robert Her _. Follow the show everywhere. It's at Spin Cycle V2. We're on a ton of platforms. And if you like the video, make sure you like, share, subscribe, pass it on to your friends, and let's keep this thing alive, well, and rolling. Tobias, Rowan, thank you for your time. The insight was super valuable. I cannot thank you guys enough.
Thank you, Robert, and best of luck with your endeavors for the rest of the evening, man. You'll be in my thoughts.
Yeah, it'll be rough. All right. Bye, everybody.
Oh, that's fun.
Say